Nature is made possible by public television stations, your gas company and America's gas industry, bringing natural gas through 1 million miles of underground pipelines to 160 million people, fueling factories, heating homes, and cooking meals.
Yellowstone is the largest and oldest of our national parks, most famous for its spectacular thermal features, including the great geyser Old Faithful, and other geyser basins, such as this one. Hi, I'm George Page for Nature, and about 2 million visitors from all over the world come here to Yellowstone each year. They're not disappointed. But in truth, they don't see the park at its most spectacular, in winter. For 5 years, American natural history filmmaker Wolfgang Bayer has endured the harsh winters of Yellowstone to bring us scenes of a time when the park belongs not to man, but to the wildlife. Tracking through the icy wilderness at temperatures as cold as 40 degrees below zero, Bayer approached the park from nature's point of view. Like the hardy 19th century photographers of the western wilderness, Bayer reveals the natural rhythms of the great park in winter, which for countless centuries, only the animals have known. In the early 1800s, tales of a marvelous land beyond the headwaters of the Missouri River began filtering back to the people in the eastern United States. The first white explorers who paddled up the Yellowstone River found an isolated wilderness, a land set apart from the rest of the world by its remote location. The unique wonders of Yellowstone were not accepted by most as truth until the first photographs of the area were taken by explorers. They saw valleys that seemed to smoke and burn perpetually, a deep golden canyon, a great waterfall twice the height of Niagara tumbling into the abyss below, boiling hot pools, bubbling mud volcanoes, and geysers of steam bursting into the air. It all had to be seen to be believed. And now, 100 years later, explorers of a different sort are still striving to capture Yellowstone in pictures. Yellowstone National Park was established by an act of Congress in 1872, the first such park in the world. Over 3,400 square miles were set aside as a place for people to find the glories of nature in their original form. But the season of the tourist is short. When fall comes to Yellowstone, only a few people remain. The animals suddenly find themselves nearly alone in the park. Ironically, it's then that Yellowstone becomes its most dramatic. The lush green grasses of summer turn gold. The chilly winds of fall provide a signal to the animals to begin preparations for the long, arduous months of winter to come. The pika, a small cousin of the rabbit, lives in the rocks and scree slopes of the mountains. Exceedingly shy, the pika harvests leaves and grasses to build a mound of hay. Its home inside the rocks will keep it warm and secure, and the ample store of harvested grass will feed it through the winter. The trees the beaver fells provide branches covered with succulent bark. The beaver stores these branches underwater next to its lodge to ensure food in the winter months. Last-minute repairs maintain a high level of water behind the beaver's dam. Eventually, it will need room to swim beneath the frozen surface to reach its food. The most famous resident of Yellowstone Park is the grizzly bear. Though rarely seen, they roam over large areas of territory, foraging for food. Today, there are only about 200 of the huge omnivores left in all of Yellowstone. They feed on grass, grubs, and nearly anything else they can find in order to build a heavy layer of fat to live on as they sleep through the long, cold months ahead. By now, the elk have left the highlands of the park and have congregated in lower meadows for their annual rut, or mating season. The piercing bugle of the bull elk echoes through the forest. Stimulated by the powerful pheromones emitted by the cows, the bulls compete to determine which is the strongest. The victor then gathers his harem. The one victorious bull will mate with all the females he can collect, and if necessary, rigorously defend them from other males. The first snow in the higher mountains drives the bighorn sheep to lower slopes, where they can spend the remaining days grazing before winter. This is also the rutting season for the bighorn. Rams, which generally roam apart from the ewes, are drawn to the herd by the female's pheromones. The biological stimulation is irresistible. Even immature rams become stimulated, but the younger ram cannot compete. Only mature rams face each other in ritual combat. Like the bull elk, the victorious ram will mate with all the females. After mating, it leaves the herd and returns to the mountains. Birds also sense the approaching change of season. Ducks and Canada geese gather into great flocks and begin their annual migration through steel gray skies to the south. The trees cannot escape winter. After the first frost, the aspen's leaves become golden, then wither and fall. The first snow begins to sift down between the naked branches. Winter has arrived. The lodgepole pines, firs, and other evergreens prepare for winter by lowering the water content and increasing the amount of sugar in their needles, creating a natural antifreeze. The needles remain green and unharmed by the sub-zero temperatures. The last human visitors to the park flee the harsh weather to come, and just in time. The park officially closes with the first major snowstorm. The season's first blizzard is heavy, definite. Winter begins to seal Yellowstone Park in ice and snow. Making one last sweep of the snow-clogged roads, a park ranger ensures there are no visitors left stranded in the snow. Nature has already closed the park. The ranger makes it official.
$700, 511.
511, 700.
We swept the road from Grant to South. Barricade is locked for the season.
10-4, thank you. KOS 700, 1635.
511.
The roads won't be open again for automobiles until spring. The first snows of winter are impressive, even frightening. They seem never-ending. Yellowstone is a high plateau. Storms rolling in from the Pacific Northwest are laden with moisture, and Yellowstone catches the brunt of it. The snow transforms Yellowstone into a frosted masterpiece of sculpted snow and plumes of steam. Deep in the earth, beneath the ice and snow, water is superheated under pressure until the steam blasts hot, white gusts into the winter air.
Old Faithful plays to an empty house. The temperature of the pools is near boiling. The steaming waters never freeze. In the warmer valleys at lower elevations, Yellowstone's elk have a better chance of finding food. Thousands of them converge on Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and the National Elk Refuge. They are better prepared to struggle through the winter here in their ancient feeding grounds. When the natural forage in the refuge is exhausted by the huge herd, the elk are fed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Their man-made diet, pellets of compressed alfalfa. As many as 8,000 elk winter beneath the majestic Tetons. But for the animals remaining in Yellowstone, the worst is yet to come. One after another, blizzards roll into the park like immense icy waves battering a beachhead. The bison do not migrate. They must stand and endure. Groups of the giant ruminants huddle together, trying to pool their warmth and provide each other with marginal protection from the biting winds. In the freezing depth of winter, food is more essential than ever. Nourishment translates to energy for essential body heat. The bison's massive neck and head are well suited to plowing through the drifts to uncover bits of frozen grass. Meager fare, but there's little else. A desperate yearling calf, unaccustomed to winter, tries to find food in a familiar place, but its mother cannot spare the nourishment. She's probably already carrying next year's calf. In the Yellowstone winter, all must find their own way. The calf must learn to imitate its elders and find a meal beneath the snow. A few elk stay in the park. They're not as well adapted to foraging in the deep snow, but under the sheltering trees they find easier grazing. The tourists have left Yellowstone to its frozen fate.
man's artifacts have surrendered to the elements. But the buildings of the park must also survive the winter. The tourist may be gone, but there's still a few hardy people left in the park. Stephen Fuller is one of the winter caretakers. It's his job to make sure the buildings in the park survive the extreme stress and wear of the heavy winter snows and winds. One of his more demanding jobs is removing snow from building roofs. The tons of snow can crush a structure flat. By December, Yellowstone has become a vast, icy wilderness. Winter has settled in with a finality that almost precludes the hope of spring. The only sound in the pristine landscape is the labored breathing of the animals, quietly struggling to survive. It's a time of deep silence and long, dark nights, but a special time in one small part of the park.
Just the night before Christmas, all through the house, the creature was stirring. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. Mamma in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled down for a long winter's nap. Do you want to go and help Emma over there?
In their cabin in Yellowstone, Steve Fuller's family can create their own warmth. For the moment, they've forgotten the winter outside.
But I heard him exclaim as he drove out of sight, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night."
The new year dawns in Yellowstone with an icy magnificence that is unequaled in the world. Steam billows into the sky in the midst of temperatures that can reach 65 degrees Fahrenheit below zero. Taking advantage of the warm waters overflowing the geyser basins, some waterfowl stay long into the winter. As the ice slowly encroaches, the trumpeter swans become more and more crowded into smaller areas. The trumpeter does not migrate, but adapts to the harsh conditions as long as possible. The swans finally surrender to the Yellowstone winter and fly to find open water elsewhere. Meanwhile, predators like the coyote continue their search for prey in the blank expanse of blinding snow. In the small pockets beneath it, many rodents, like the squirrel, hibernate through the winter. Wrapped in tight balls, they retain their body warmth and reduce their metabolic needs to a minimum. The pika's supply of cured grasses, carefully gathered in the fall, now provides ample food under the mantle of snow. Its lodge as secure as a cozy cave, the beaver can ignore the howling winter outside. The twigs and branches it stored under the water are its only food source until the ice melts. A gopher burrows under the ground, searching for roots. The rodent's sharp claws enable it to dig for food even in the frozen soil. Occasionally, it must venture up into the snow to dispose of excess dirt from its tunnels. The infinitely adaptable coyote hunts carefully through the drifts. To save precious energy, it tries to follow paths already cut in the snow. Its keen ears pinpoint the high-pitched noises made by rodents tunneling under the snow. Winter makes the struggle for survival much more intense. Some must die so that others may live. Searching for food, the coyote crosses frozen Yellowstone Lake. To the coyote, the sight of river otters means another possible meal. It's not the otters the coyote is after, it's their fish. The otters must eat above the surface, a fact the coyote has learned to exploit. Thermal vents in the lake create holes in the ice. The coyote can be run in circles as the otters play hide-and-seek, ducking in and out of the convenient open water. The frigid lake is an effective barrier, and stealing the fish is more difficult than it seemed. Another scavenger, the raven, can drop with impunity on the edge of the ice, picking up bits of food. But the coyote knows better than to venture out onto the fragile surface. The otters keep their fish. The coyote gives up, but before it leaves, its scent marks the spot, inadvertently making a cogent comment on the whole proceedings. The winter's coldest months have settled onto Yellowstone like a rimy pall. Seeking to escape the numbing cold, some of the bison begin to move toward the geyser basins. Drawn by the warmth generated underground, they gather where the clouds of steam warm the thin winter air. The ground itself is warmed by deep volcanic fires, and some sparse moss and grasses survive winter's worst onslaught. The green plants belie the harsh weather only a few feet away. There's hardly enough forage to go around. As the few elk remaining in the park take advantage of the same warmth, the small food supply dwindles even faster. Coyotes are drawn by the possibility of weakened prey. Antelope are rarely seen in the basins. Coyotes will prey on weaker antelope, but this pronghorn is healthy, and the coyotes are looking for an easier kill. The air is cold enough to freeze a tear before it hits the ground, but the Firehold River, fed by thermal runoff, never freezes. The valley is shrouded in clouds of condensing steam. Survival has become a matter of finding ways to stave off winter's continual assaults. A few ducks and geese will spend the entire winter in the warm stream. Elk stand in the water to absorb the warmth and to feed on aquatic plants under the river's surface. Bison have not learned to take advantage of the river's limited food source. They stand stoically in the curtains of drifting steam. Moisture condensing in their thick coats freezes immediately. They face a grim choice, to fight the biting cold and find food, or to remain sheltered here in the steam and slowly starve. The weaker begin to succumb. Winter kill starts to take its toll. Those left to face the rest of the winter gaze softly at the bones of a fallen comrade. As many as 200 of the bison in the park can perish in a single harsh winter. Only the strongest survive. Death is good news to the scavengers. Coyotes and ravens have subsisted on a meager diet until now. The fallen bison provide a much-needed feast. The coyotes work within a rigidly defined social structure. The dominant ones eat first, communicating their position with body language, an arched back and bared fangs. Even though food may be plentiful, the other must wait its turn, as do the ravens. Nothing goes to waste. The grim business of life continues in the frozen park. Winter silence has been unbroken for months, but now a strange invader enters Yellowstone. Though the loud apparitions roar through the park, the animals pay them little heed. Energy cannot be wasted. The bison and the elk continue to scratch for life, ignoring the noise and presence of the invaders.
Yeah.
Late in winter, before the spring thaw starts, the roads are open to snowmobile travel. For a short time, tourists can re-enter the park and glimpse it in a totally different form. For the adventurous few who endure the high-altitude winter, Yellowstone Park offers visual riches of unparalleled beauty. The crisp winter air accentuates the dramatic spectacle of the park's display. Restricted to established roadways now covered with a thick layer of snow, the winter tourists assault the park in snowmobiles and full-track snow coaches, creating a hard-packed thoroughfare. The coyote has learned to take advantage of the easier path. But by taking advantage of this route, the coyote exposes itself to the danger of human intruders and their roaring machines. Occasionally, they pay a price.
I'm out here in the Hayden Valley near Alum Creek. Looks like there's a coyote who's been hit by a snowmobile. He's dead here by the side.
For the bison, the choice between struggling through the deep snow or traveling on the packed road is an easy one. Enduring the noisy passerby is a small price to pay to save so much energy. The bridge provides a safe crossing over the hazards of the river. The frozen rivers and lakes are dangerous. Though the Park Service discourages interference with animal fates, sometimes well-meaning visitors attempt to change nature's course.
Okay, get around the corner. Okay, got it. Okay, up a little bit. Pull. Okay, ready? Three? On three. 1, 2, 3. Pull. 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 Pull.
Though valiant, their efforts were in vain. But even the long Yellowstone winter must finally come to an end. The days lengthen, the temperatures rise. The well-fed pika feels the first warmth and hears the first melting drip of disappearing snow. The murmur of flowing water echoes up through thinning layers of ice. The streams begin to open. The lakes and ponds slowly shed their ice. A muskrat emerges to enjoy the first day of spring. And so does the beaver. The swans return as the ice relinquishes its hold on the lake. Golden-eyed ducks float among ragged chunks of winter that drift past the beaver's lodge. Inside the lodge, the miracle of spring is occurring. The beaver's kits wait in the warmth of their lodge for the last of winter to leave. The snow gives way to the rebirth of flowers. The white recedes as the green flourishes. Yellowstone is reborn. Trumpeter swans proudly parade their young. Bison calves, unaware of the winter so soon past, feed on their mother's milk and frolic in the rich grass. Coyote pups get a first glimpse of the world in which they will live. The grizzly bears awaken, hungry after their long winter sleep. They will not be satisfied with grubs and grasses now. The elk return to Yellowstone, bringing their young calves to their new summer home. Predators seek the unwary young, the unprotected calf. The cow elk fiercely drives the coyotes away. Young coyotes watch to learn how to hunt. Soon they will join the chase. But today, all they learn is that hunting is difficult and not always successful. Watchful eyes see the next change in the park.
Hello, welcome to Yellowstone. Here's a map for you. Hello, sir. Here's a map for you. Welcome to Yellowstone. All right, need a map, sir?
Welcome to Yellowstone.
Hi, welcome to Yellowstone.
Hi,
Here's a
welcome to
map for you.
Yellowstone. There you go.
Welcome to Yellowstone, sir. Thank you.
Have a nice trip.
Hello, welcome to Yellowstone. Here's a map for you.
Hi there. Thank you. Pick one for animal. There you go. Have a nice trip now.
All right, here's a map for you.
Every summer, more than 2 million tourists will pour into Yellowstone seeking a glimpse of the vast wonders of the park. The roads fill with cars, campers, and buses of all sizes, bringing visitors from around the world.
All right, need a map, sir?
Abruptly, the animals are no longer alone. Winter's icy barrier has melted away, allowing a new herd to migrate into the park. A herd that seems to assume immediate ownership. Yellowstone National Park faces a complicated dilemma. Established to provide people with a place to see nature in its original form, the park, in the midst of the hot summer months, takes on an unreal atmosphere. The ageless beauty of Yellowstone can get lost in the shuffle. At times, the park seems more of a drive-through zoo than the natural preserve it was meant to be. Rangers try to keep animals and visitors apart. Each is dangerous to the other. In some ways, the needs of the tourist have begun to overshadow the needs of the park. Inevitably, the presence of so many people changes subtle natural balances. In 1892, Teddy Roosevelt said, "It is of the utmost importance that the park shall be kept in its present form as a great forestry preserve and a national pleasure ground, the like of which is not to be found on any continent but ours." Today, it has become increasingly apparent that the needs of a forestry preserve and those of a national pleasure ground are very different things. We are learning that nature's treasures are neither immortal nor impervious to our influence. Yellowstone National Park, despite its fame and popularity, remains a distant land, a fragile island blessed with a magnificent but finally unapproachable beauty. Nature goes to Florida to see what happens when exotic new plants and animals from overseas are introduced into Florida's sunny subtropical environment. Jet Set Wildlife, our film next week on Nature.
Nature is made possible by